What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. It's Titi here, and I'm back with another video for you. So for today's video, we're talking all about makeup brushes. Okay, so I really want to help you guys understand how to pick out the right brushes for your makeup products and what brushes to use with certain products in your kit. So yeah, if that sounds good to you, if you're one of those people where you're just like, there's so much information out there, there's so many different brushes, I don't even know what to use for what, then this video will be very helpful for you. And even if you're somebody that already does makeup right now, but you're just looking to improve your technique, then this video will be helpful for you because I really share what I've learned over the years, and I compare side by side as well the different brushes that I would use for certain products and how each of them would perform. So if all of that sounds good to you, then let's just go ahead and jump straight into the video. The feeling got me in a haze. Okay, you guys, so I'm starting with my brows, and for my brows I use a brow pencil, so I don't necessarily use a brush. If you're using a brow powder or pomade, then you will need to use a brow brush. But honestly, if you're a beginner, I do think a pencil is the way to go. So I just fill it in and I use the spoolie end to brush it out. As far as cleaning up my brows with concealer, then there are multiple brush options, right? So I could use any of these brushes here and they would work really well. So when I'm picking out a brush to clean up my concealer, I'm looking for something that is small, something that is easy for me to manipulate as I'm trying to carve out that brow area, and then something that is going to allow me get that precise clean application. This one right here that I grabbed is my favorite. It has the longest bristles out of everything, and it's just the easiest for me to manipulate. And then it's really sharp and precise, and I'm just able to get that clean line. So I just go all around the brow that I have carved out. Okay, next I'm moving on to my primer. I just rub my primer all over my face with my hands. You don't need a brush for that, of course. And then we're going straight into foundation. So when it comes to foundation, these are all the potential brushes / tools that you could use. I'm going to start with the brushes, and these two brushes right here, the Real Techniques brush and the e.l.f. brush, are pretty much the same brush, just from different brands. So this is what I would grab for a liquid foundation. So this brush, as you can see, the bristles are it's a very dense brush and tightly packed together, and this brush works really well but when you go ahead and just like tap it onto your skin. If you try to swirl it around back and forth, it doesn't feel comfortable, it doesn't feel natural, and so it doesn't work when you're trying to use it like that. This brush that I'm showing right here is a stippling brush. This one, you can tell that the bristles are not as densely packed as the first one. Personally, I love this brush for liquid foundations as well, but it doesn't give as much coverage as the first brush would give. The stippling brush works really well for cream and stick foundations, because when I'm working with a cream and stick, I really want to be able to swirl it back and forth and really just melt it into my skin. If I grabbed the first brush and I was trying to just tap it on with a cream product, the cream product might not blend out as easily. So also I would use this brush for like a tinted moisturizer, a tinted oil, anything like that. Most times those products you're not meant to be getting full coverage with it, so it just makes sense to go in with a stippling brush because it really is supposed to just melt into your skin and just look like your skin but better. And then this brush, as you can see here, I'm just applying my foundation using the first brush from Real Techniques, and it just blends out that foundation beautifully with the most amount of coverage that I could possibly get. Another option is to go in with sponges. Your traditional sponge, which is what I'm showing here, will blend out your foundation. It definitely will blend out, honestly, any makeup product, but the only thing to keep in mind is that it will soak up most of your products. So if you're looking for more of a full coverage, then that's not the way to go. This sponge from Juvias is a little bit unique. It's not going to soak up products. As you can see here, the texture is a little bit different. Even as I'm folding it, you can just see that it's a little bit different, and so that's the side that I would use to blend out my foundation, and it's going to give pretty much the same amount of coverage like a brush would. The other side is more like your typical sponge, and so that will soak up more product than the first side. So yeah, those are all the brushes and tools that I would potentially use for creams or liquid foundation. Another type of foundation is a powder foundation. Now, when it comes to a powder foundation works really well when you go in with a puff. A powder foundation is supposed to give maximum coverage, depending on the formula, of course, but most likely you're really trying to get the most coverage because you don't have anything else underneath that, powder foundation, right? So you're trying to get the most coverage, so you will get the best results when you just go straight in with the puff and just go ahead and swipe it on your face. Now moving on to cream contour. So these are all the brushes that I could potentially use for cream contouring. Starting with the same stippling brush that I showed earlier for the cream foundation, you can use this for a cream contour as well, because a cream foundation and a cream contour are pretty much the same formula. The only reason why I might not recommend this brush for everyone is if you have a small face, this brush is a little bit big, so it might just spread out that contour a little bit too much. So if you have a smaller stippling brush, then that will work amazing. This is another brush that you could potentially use for a cream contour. As you can see, this is more dense than the first one, and this, if you're trying to stipple it on, it's not going to give the best results. You want to go ahead and just tap it on into those areas and you will get that nice contoured look. This is another brush. This is a Fenty Beauty brush, and I actually really like this, even for powder contours as well. It works really well with cream and powder, and just the same thing, I would go ahead and just tap it on. So these two brushes are pretty much the same, the Real Techniques brush and the AOA. I would say the AOA is a dupe for the Real Techniques, but if you notice a similarity in these two brushes and the Fenty Beauty brush that I showed right before this, the shape is pretty much the same. This is just a smaller size. So personally, this is my favorite brush to use for contour, because my contour area is I'm trying to be as defined and just as precise as possible with my application, especially when I go to contour around my nose. As you can see here, I'm using the same brush and it just gets right in there. And this brush, let me just throw it out there right now, I use this brush for almost everything in my routine and it just works really well. So you guys are gonna see it come back again. Now I'm going in with my blush. Of course, blush with a cream blush, you can apply it with your fingers. You can apply it with a brush as well, but I just go straight with my fingers because I get the most coverage that way. And then once I apply the blush, I always go back around with my foundation brush just to make sure everything is blended together. Now we're going in with concealer. Like I said before, you guys are going to see me use this brush a lot of times. So I really like this brush for concealer because it's small enough to cup that area right under my eye, but also it gives a really nice blend, just because the way the bristles are, it doesn't feel too, like, the under eye area is a very sensitive area, so you don't want something that's going to be tugging at it. It just feels really nice and soft right under there. So this brush works really well. You could also use a sponge to blend out your concealer, but just similar to what I was saying with the foundation, when you use a sponge, it will soak up some of the concealer, so you're not going to get as much coverage as you would if you just straight up used a brush. And I'm just using that same brush to blend concealer on my lid as well. And this is just my face with everything that I've laid down right now. You can see that everything looks pretty blended, pretty soft, but just it's looking like one cohesive look altogether. So there are different kinds of powders. Of course, we have a loose setting powder, we have a pressed setting powder, and we have a foundation powder. So right here I'm going in with my Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Setting Powder. This is more of a finishing powder. It doesn't have a lot of pigment to it, but it does what a powder is supposed to do. It's going to set, it's going to mattify and perfect. So I went in with the brush first, and when I did the brush side, it applied the powder beautifully. The only difference between the brush and the puff, as you can see, is that the puff gives more coverage. So I'm just going back in and just adding a little bit more powder on my face, just under my eye with the brush. Now I'm working with a very small area, and that's why I started with that concealer brush first, because I wanted to go ahead and just set that area. I'm still going to go ahead and set the rest of my face everywhere else that we haven't set with powder up until this point. And for that, I'm using your traditional powder brush. Now this is, everybody has this in their kit, I feel like, and as you can just see, even though the bristles appear to be tightly packed together, it is not a very dense brush. It's actually pretty soft. So even as I'm tapping it onto my face, you can see how it's like just, you know, kind of separating a little bit. Like it's a really soft and fluffy brush, and this is amazing for powders. This brush would not work for foundation because the foundation would literally just like melt the brush. Like the brush would just be all over the place. You can either stipple the powder on, kind of like just swirl, go around in small circles, or you can just tap it like I did there. Either one will get good results, but just in general, in my makeup application, I like tapping more than I like swiping back and forth. So I just blended out my nose with the sponge, with the Juvias sponge, and now I'm going in to contour my nose. When I'm contouring my nose, I love a small fluffy brush like this. This is actually an eyeshadow brush, but you can just see, because I'm working with an area that's really small and I don't want that contour to just be one straight line, I like a fluffy brush. Whenever you use a small fluffy brush like this, even for eyeshadow, it just applies the product in a really soft manner. Like it gives the effect, but it's not going to be too intense. So that's why I like that brush. Now we're going into bronzer and blush. Realistically, you can use the same brush both for your bronzer and for your blush. So I'm grabbing this one, and I just like how it's angled. It really cups that area, and it just really helps me to blend that product right into my cheeks, and it just feels really nice. So you can see how this brush is kind of bending as it's touching my skin. It's similar to that powder brush because the bristles are not tightly packed together. So it works really well with powder products. Again, if I grab this and I try to use it with a cream blush, it's not going to work as good as it's working with a powder blush. And you guys, that's pretty much the bulk of it for the face. I went ahead and I worked on my lips. I just applied this lipstick really quick, and then to finish up the face, I went back in with some highlighter, some shimmer highlighter. For my highlighting, I like using a brush that is also really soft. Again, remember what I said with the nose contour brush. Whenever you're working with an area that requires a soft application, the softer the bristles of the brush, the lighter it is, the better your results will be. So even though this brush kind of looks similar to the concealer brush that I used earlier, the only difference is that it's not, the bristles are not as tightly packed together as the concealer brush. The area on my nose, it's very precise, so I wanted something small and just detailed, and that's why I reached for that one. Okay, you guys, so this is my final look. I tried to make this as detailed and as beginner friendly as possible, but if you have any other questions for me, be sure to leave a comment and I will get to it. Also, if you want to see more videos like this, definitely let me know so I can keep working on it. And don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe. It definitely helps me and it helps the algorithm. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I will catch you guys in another one. Bye. The feeling got me in a haze.